I know often when we get to this part of the afternoon, we've had a lot of activity and lots of thinking, and we're probably pretty tired. But hopefully, you all have a few ideas to kind of share with us today about your data experiences. And we'll have Mike come up here and lead our final session here today. So.
Kevin, stop being so tall. Hi, everyone. So how did today go for everybody? Most of what we heard today was about AI and ML, and a little bit about data ethics, but whatever. But no, seriously, that was actually a great presentation about all the work that Jeff Weber and, oh, I already forgot the other presenters, oh my. But the data sovereignty issue, the data ethics issue, that's a really important topic that I don't think people think about often enough. I know I didn't until they were telling me about this project in the first place. So that was a great presentation, and I love the work they're doing with those teams, with those colleges. But most of the presentations today were about artificial intelligence and machine learning. And what I find interesting about this is we're still learning how to apply it. And that doesn't feel quite the case with most of the other tools and information that we use in our industry. But AI and ML, I'm going to trip over that so much, we're still coming up with a lot of ideas. We're still sort of in the brainstorming phase of this. And I think that's really fascinating. And just to sort of put some context into us being here together, one of the best things about conferences, of course, is the networking opportunities. And for workshops like this, it's even better because you have this exchange of ideas, strategies, and even code. So by being here together, working with each other, we're helping solve each other's problems. We had a great moment with that yesterday. And gaining new insights, gaining new thoughts. So with that in mind, a couple of things. First of all, when you go back home and return to your daily workflows, I hope you'll continue to share what you've learned and share your stories with your colleagues and others and continue that exchange of ideas. And because we're still so much in this brainstorming phase of how to really implement, how can we utilize these tools, those can be some really fun conversations. And like I said yesterday, I really appreciated Susan's talk because she has a perspective very different than mine. And so you can have these brainstorming conversations with people who have no understanding of how the weather works. And that might actually be a really interesting conversation because that's where you get the questions that come way out of left field. So keep exchanging these ideas. And then the second thing, as we're learning more about AI and ML, we'll want to experiment with different ideas and explore what we can do with us, or what this can do for us. And as we saw today, there are lots of different usages, very diverse usages. And sometimes an experiment doesn't always work, and that's okay. So if you're going in, I wonder if AI and ML will work for this. No is an acceptable answer. And you might not find that out until you've done the work. We saw some of that today too. So now I'm curious. What are some of your ideas? What are some of your thoughts? I don't know if any of you are considering incorporating AI, ML into your projects, your take-home projects. Are you? And if so, how do you think it could be utilized? And then even if you're not using it now, do you think you'll continue to explore this as an option for yourselves? And if so, how do you think you'll do that? And with that, give me all your answers and questions and comments and such. Or I'm going to start calling people out. Yes?
Well, I just got this, basically I took what Thomas just presented to us a couple minutes ago, and I tried to apply it to something that we do at my job, and it worked, I think. I got something out of it. I got a plot out of it, which is fine. I can work from there. But I will say that I snapped a picture of it. I sent to my boss, who was paying for me to be here, and he said, "Great, I am about to be replaced. I'm about to get a promotion. So thank you, Thomas." That's good news.
I just take 10% off the
Awesome.
So you did a surcharge.
Yeah.
You know, that reminds me of, and this obviously isn't the end of this story, but automation replacing workforces, right? We're gonna get replaced. Unless you're the one maintaining that automation, building that automation, right? So with AI and ML, I'm just gonna start saying AI, that is kind of the case as well, because especially at the onset, we need human confirmation that the thing is working. Is it giving us the results we want? For example, multiple people have told me the same story, where they ask ChatGPT for some amount of research papers, maybe ones that they've been on, maybe ones that their colleagues have been on, or some topic that they're aware of. And ChatGPT will give back like 5 results, all of them wrong. All of them not even real. Like there might be a paper with the right members on it, but the title's completely wrong. There might be the other way around. It has the right title and kind of the right content, but the wrong presenters and other things like that. So you cannot, and I'm pretty sure everyone here is on the same page, but you can't just blindly trust any of this right now. And I don't know, we probably will get to a point where we can. I don't know how long it's going to take to get there. So, show of hands. Did anybody put fingers to code on some of these AI techniques today? Even if it was just to kick the tires on some of these? Nick did? Anybody else? Oh, okay. Who's watching online chat for me today?
I got it right here. There's nothing going on.
Love it. Well, I tell you what, I have thought about this over time, like how can we use this? I've got a couple of ideas. How many people are familiar with the RGB air mass product for satellite imagery? I know you are. A few of us. So for those of you who don't know, I believe this was originally created and developed by ECMWF, EU MetSat maybe. And when GOES 16 launched, of course, now we have the same technology. We can make those products for our domains. And what this looks like is, imagine just a wide range of colors, greens, blues, reds, oranges, and they have meaning. One of the features that I'm always intrigued about is when I see a big red blob move across from west to east, and that's a sign of how deep a low pressure system is. That's not actually what you're sampling, but it can be a proxy. Because I'm noticing, just subjectively as I'm watching this product, that there seems to be a correlation between the redness of the color of that feature and the depth of the system, or the strength of the system, to just put some subjective terminology behind it. So I'm curious. This is an RGB product, so it's kind of hard to just do math on the raw data, but not really, you could, but for imagery, I wonder if we could do some sort of a spectral analysis and look at the shades of reds. And based on the shades of reds, if we would come up with some sort of an index that correlates the strength of a system coming across the country. I have no idea if that correlation is real or not. I'm pretty sure it is, but to what degree, to what kind of variability, no idea. So my idea for looking into this, kicking the tires with it, is to do some sort of AI characterization of these features in both color, size, and even shape, and give me some help some automated help, please, in understanding the similarities between this imagery and these features and the weather that's sensible on the ground. That's my idea. So if anyone's interested in dabbling with some of that work, I have dabbled with AI a little bit. I took basically it was a data science survey course with Python. It's kind of interesting. So we were going through some just very basic classic examples of like characterizations between cats and dogs. I didn't do well. I had a lot of dog-shaped cats. And that's just about my experience with it. But it's something I'm constantly thinking about, just how can we use this? So I'm curious, does anybody have any ideas? Any thoughts? Yeah, that's fine too. Yes?
I was just going to mention, so now we've been talking about like where to find data and
Yes.
Some of that side. It's been interesting, like seeing, especially like some of the natural language processing and like some of the chat GPT like things for data portals. I know that there's been like some agencies that have started to sort of test it out in terms of being able to leverage like the existing metadata collections that everyone has paired with like some of these different machine learning AI techniques and stuff like that to be able to make like a smarter search and stuff like that. That's something that these next like few years, 5-10 years or so, it'll be neat to see kind of how that develops.
That's interesting. Just kind of piggyback off that thought. What's nice about these tools is that they help our automation, because we can feed these things tens of thousands of images and it'll just go to work. The amount of data that we are generating as a planet and the variability of that, the different formats, I'm wondering, at some point, are we going to need that level of assistance in simply finding data? I don't think we're there yet, but that's an interesting thought. Okay, so how about this? Does anybody have any concerns about AI and ML?
I saw a camera come on, so it might be something.
That's Pete.
Hi, Pete. Pete, you got anything for us, or are you just...
You just hanging out with us, or you got a question?
No, they said go ahead and unmute your video and they'll put us up. I had a student in my class, or in my office, but no, I'm enjoying just listening to the discussion. So thanks.
Absolutely. Yes.
My concern would be, this might sound like a basic thing, but people trusting it too much. Because like you mentioned earlier, it's a very helpful tool, but it's one of those things you don't want to just take anything that it says and run with it.
Right.
That could also cause a spread of misinformation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we saw this multiple times this week already. Communication is paramount in getting information out to people. And it's sometimes very easy to screw that up. And we can have some pretty damaging effects if we don't effectively communicate what we think people should do. If we need people to take shelter, we can't really have mixed messaging. So this is something, obviously, the Weather Service has been putting in a huge amount of effort into optimizing. So now we have formats like what, where, when in our warning products. And it's just really helpful to drill down straight to the information you need that's applicable to you right now. So, yes.
It's the old idiom, when you're holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So, but something I really appreciated about Skylar's talk, the first one this morning, was when it's more appropriate to use machine learning tools and when it's less so.
Yes.
Because if you can't just throw AI at everything, because what it gives you is not useful for everything. So just having that context, like I feel more confident in knowing when to apply it than I did yesterday.
Absolutely. When she was talking about, if you can do this decision making with simple if statements, well, just do that, right? Don't go through the effort, don't go through the work when you're really shooting yourself in the foot by doing so. I'm sitting here throughout the afternoon trying to brainstorm ideas for projects and usages, and probably 2/3 of them I got through the idea. I'm like, no, that'd be an if statement. So yeah, that's a very good point. I appreciated that moment too, yeah. Yes?
Kind of just on the topic of like AI in important or critical situations like the weather, or like parts where it could be dangerous to trust it. I tried to use ChatGPT to plan a backpacking trip a couple months ago.
Okay.
And it is just so confident. It tells you with 100% confidence, you know, take these trails, like this is a great idea, but those trails don't exist.
So I was chatting with Scott Collis last night, and he's from Australia. Australia has, if you're not aware, some inhospitable parts of that landmass, and he came across a couple of people who were trying to drive across one of those areas, and they had been pulled over. They were pulled over and had their flashers on, so that doesn't seem right. And I'm not from there, so I don't know, but it sounds like it's very commonplace that when you see that in those parts, you pull over and make sure everyone's okay. And they were like, yeah, we're fine. It's, you know, the check engine light came on, and we're just kind of figuring that out. Well, where are you going? Oh, we're going over here. How long do you think it's going to take you to get there? Oh, a couple hours. It's going to be more like a couple of days. And they had no idea. They had like one bottle of water between the two of them. And if they hadn't gotten that advice, so I guess what they had done was just like a very simple look at a map. There it is. Okay, these are the roads to get there. Yeah, that shouldn't take too long. No experience, no prep.
Yeah, and like with ChatGPT, if you don't check the things that it says, it can really lead you down a bad. If you don't like double check it with the rest of the internet, I guess.
I've only done this once, but I've used ChatGPT to generate boilerplate code and template code. When I'm working on a new project, a lot of times what I do is I try, where applicable, to pair that with learning something new, some new coding technique, maybe a new library or something. So I'm speaking of data, hey, this is really applicable. The project is IDD cataloging. I'm working on trying to catalog all of the data that's coming over the IDD, or the Unidata IDD. And I wanted to do this by running one of the LDM tools, and it gives you real-time output of what's coming across. And I wanted to wrap that with some Python. You can do this several different ways, but one thing I've never really done is use async IO or event loops. And I'm sitting here thinking, this might be a good excuse to dabble in some of that. And in trying to search for how to implement this, I can get like a piece of it here, a piece of it there, but in terms of applying it to exactly my use case, I could have sat there for days trying to figure this out, or I asked ChatGPT, and there's the code. And as long as you give it like a generic prompt and mitigate your expectations a little bit, it nailed it. And it worked great out of the box. And the interesting thing is I ran the prompts through a second time, the exact same one, and I got a slightly different answer. But it would work just the same. It was like a different feature of the sub-process module or something. It was interesting. But that, I think, is one really good use of ChatGPT right now. Again, don't trust it. But I think it's great for boilerplate code, just to help get you started.
Yeah, that's what I found too. It's been really helpful with that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I used it today to get it to teach me how to read in some data off S3.
Okay.
And it was not immediately helpful. Like the first snippet of code it gave me didn't work. And I said, why did I get this error message? And it said, oh, because you got to do it this way. I did that way and it worked. So at least for...
So if you use ChatGPT today, why didn't you raise your hand? That's another use that I've heard people say is helping understand and resolve errors. Just put the error input or error output into ChatGPT and let it give you its insight. Yeah.
Do you know, does it learn when, so say like something that, like that kind of situation, you ask it to do something, it gives you the wrong answer, and then you go back and say, that didn't work. Is it learning as it goes? Does it learn from our conversations with it, or?
Not, from what I understand, not live.
Okay.
I bet they're capturing all of it and we'll learn more later, but
Okay.
I don't believe it's learning live.
Okay. That's good to know.
So it learned, so yes and no.
Okay.
It does not bank any of the information that it learns while you have an active session open, but it will learn in your active session. So if you go to it and say, hey, why did this code not work? And it comes, so as a for instance, I made this baseball graphic with a bunch of baseball forecasting stuff on it for fantasy baseball users to bet on stuff. Money.
There's
So
a story.
what I was having a problem with though was getting everything lined up in the correct spot. And I kept on getting this error, and I would go back and I'd be like, why is this not showing up where it should? Why is this pulling the data from this row and not that row when I specifically am telling it to pull from a certain place? And I went back and forth with ChatGPT for like 15 minutes, and it would say, oh, I'm so sorry for the confusion. Let me fix that for you. And after about 4 or 5 different times, it would be like, wow, this seems to be a big problem for us. Let's see if we can't try this instead. And it would go back and forth. So it'll learn within that one conversation you have. But the second that you refresh the page, log out, log back in, it doesn't remember anything.
Memory. Okay.
But I will say, so I asked not ChatGPT, the ChatGPT, but like ChatGPT, the people, and if what we're putting into it is a learned thing for every next iteration, because every month they come out with a new iteration, and they said not exactly, but not no. So I don't know what that means, but that was the answer they gave.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, okay, because this didn't work the first time around, show of hands. Who here has ever used ChatGPT or something similar? Why didn't you raise your hands before? That counts.
Oh, I thought you just meant today.
Yeah, I think you said today the first time.
I probably did. Okay, who here has used ChatGPT today? That's still more than before, guys. But yes, you're right.
Who was shy before? Sorry. Okay.
It's all good. All right. How about challenges? Oh, Tanya?
I don't want to redirect if you're already redirecting, but I was just curious beyond the AI ML applications and conversation that we had today, kind of expanding more into the data ethics space. And some of that has been raised, but were there any sort of opportunities, challenges, reflection, use cases for folks in their day-to-day or future around the data ethics component and data governance and sovereignty?
Certainly.
Sort of what came from that aspect for folks.
Certainly, the ethics component of that is very real. I mean, that don't trust it at face value falls right under that heading.
I think for me, it's got me really thinking about how do I let people know about the source, right, of the data in a more fundamental way than, you know, I mean, obviously in code, right, you usually have links. I do a lot with just like data that's available remotely, and so it's inherently there, but it's like, no, I could probably be a lot more explicit without adding a whole chunk of stuff to just more directly relate and give a little bit of provenance to what this data are. Data are always plural. So that then it's more front-facing, and then if there are issues that come up, then it's an easier dialogue to then overcome those issues or be able to better set that in context.
Thomas, hand his hand up for a little bit.
Yeah, one thing for data ethics, if you think about remote sensing data, you can't see a ton of people at 90-meter grid cells. Maxar, you can get commercially available 10-centimeter aerial imagery now. So what sort of issues and ethics and problems, and a whole bucket of muck comes from 10-centimeter images of people's backyards or offices or private spaces.
Can we use AI to take them out?
Yeah.
Or Native American reservations, or you name it, Maxar sells it. So
That's already a concern. Like, we are actually really lucky that we have all of these readily available satellite data sets, even like GOES, Meteosat, Himawari, because those cross sovereign national borders. So we can see North Korea. They probably don't like that, but like we're actually in a really good space with like UMETSAT and NOAA agreements, that sort of thing, for us to have this data sharing so we can look at other countries. Like when Ukraine was first invaded, I could just pull data from Sentinel and just be like, oh, it's muddy, no wonder the tanks can't move. Like you can see that. And like ethically speaking, there's a lot of things going on in the world that could be taken advantage of.
Do we know, because I don't, how much publicly they announce the training data or what goes into that model?
for what?
For ChatGPT.
No, that's the whole.
It's a black box.
Well, yeah, that's like that's their whole mode.
Because that's another one. I mean, I feel like I heard somebody say they weren't allowed by their organization to use ChatGPT specifically because it wouldn't reveal the source data and therefore can't use it. Move along. Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention, like, I had never heard that, like, CARE term for data and stuff like that. We hear about, like, FAIR and stuff like that, and open data, open science, and obviously tomorrow we'll dig more into open science stuff. But I just want to say that brought up some really good conversation. It's a good thing to talk about just because it's open data is important, but there's a lot. It's a lot more complex, and there's a lot more there. And, especially like on the observational side, as well, more so the observational side, like meteorology, which is a huge part of the field. Like just thinking about like these communities and stuff that we're going to, and not trying to be so extractive, where it's like you're just trying to gather a bunch of information about that specific community, but rather working with them, and whether it's the sovereign nations and stuff like that, or even just other communities and stuff like that. Just trying to think more about how to be more inclusive with that and really work with like local community members and stuff like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of overlap between these concerns, absolutely. And just to give the opportunity for this, this feels like a good segue. Did anyone have any thoughts regarding the data sovereignty and those issues with like I'm blanking on the term now. Jeff Weber's presentation today. Were there any thoughts on that project with SIPI and the? Thank you. Any thoughts there?
I mean, I think one of the critical things that brings up is that most of us are so inured to accepting terms of agreement for things that really one of the meta ideas that I took out of that is that really taking a step back from that and really analyzing for things that we do and the ways that we interact in a social network, about not assuming things on the front end in order to allow folks who have their data, however that's generated, that they really do get to choose when and how broadly that is shared, and such a great focal point coming out from a community it's great having their leadership on this, because I think it's something that I overlook too often.
It didn't even occur to me until I sat down with Jeff at AMS for probably 30, 45 minutes and just had a conversation with him about these projects that he's working on. And it's, not only is it fascinating, but it's so enlightening because it's another angle that we often don't think about. And like some of those graphics showed, data sampling in those areas is incredibly sparse. I mean, we're talking around about how, man, we got to get a mesonet for the ports over here. We got to get a mesonet for Chicago. Everyone needs a mesonet. Really, everyone needs a mesonet. They have barely anything.
It's 4:15.
It's about 4:15. So,
Thank you all for another amazing day. Got another little over half a day left where we'll talk about open science, reproducible science, and how all these things with our data fit together, and a final portion of our take-home project that we're not going to do a big share, but we will definitely have people get in groups to share towards the end to show what progress you have and the ideas that you're going to be taking forth from this workshop. So hope everyone has a great evening, and we'll see you back here for a start time of just before 9 a.m. tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.